Welcome everyone, and a very, very good morning. I'm Deepthi. And to give a context on Heal Clinic, to continue with what Gladia mentioned, just to give a perspective, there was a time in my life when being a caretaker to a family member became my primary responsibility. And for those of you who have had that experience, you know that it means multiple hospital visits, consultations with doctors, dietary changes, which affects everybody in the family, sleepless nights. And despite all the efforts, nothing much really changed in their condition. But yes, what did happen was that over a period of time, it took a toll on my mental and emotional health. And since I wasn't really getting many answers from science, that's when I started exploring what we now call as the alternate healing world. And this I'm talking about like 2008, 2010. There wasn't too much information at that time. And since there wasn't too much information, I honestly moved from one therapist to another, one therapy to another, not really knowing what I was doing. I'm sure most of our journeys start that way. But slowly, some kind of answers begin to emerge for me. But I think more than the answers, I started seeing life differently. As I interacted with healers, with therapists, with seekers, I listened to a lot of podcasts, read books. I got certified in different therapies. And I realized that life is not really linear or singular as we believe it to be, but we live in a world of duality. Now, what do I mean by world of duality? Meaning where pain and joy, sadness and laughter, illness and healing all can coexist. They don't really need to be mutually exclusive. And true healing lies when we embrace this duality in our life, which means that yes, there is pain, there is sadness, but along with that, if we can embrace the joy and the laughter, that is when true healing begins. And believe me, that is the power that each one of us holds, the power to heal ourselves by going within and really understanding where are we coming from? Where am I coming from? Because remember, not every problem has a solution. Or it's also like not every issue can be resolved in the way that I want it to be. Like I may want a relationship with my spouse to be of a particular kind, but not necessary that that is how that relationship is going to be, or my career the way I want to be. And then there are some issues which may really never go away. But what can change? And that is what I realized where healing teaches us is how do we look at those challenges? How do we relate to those challenges? Because healing is not always about resolution. And I really want to stress on that because a lot of us think that healing is about resolving, is about getting our life back onto the way we want it. No. Healing is about finding new perspectives, discovering our inner resilience, and honestly, it's about learning ways to live with more peace, joy, and acceptance with no matter what life throws our way. And with that, when this is what I experienced, is that when I kind of made a promise to myself that maybe it's time to create a space where seekers and healers both come together and we build a community where we have real conversations, deep healing, and we have the space to share our journeys because all of us in some way or the other are on similar journeys. The challenges may look different, but the journeys are similar. And from that promise to myself was born Heal Clinic. And last year, from that came the idea of Manthan, which is a healing festival that basically gives us a sacred space, a community space to pause, to reflect, and to go deeper within ourselves, but have the safety of a group, of a community. So, welcome to Manthan. We started Manthan last year with a 1 day thing, and this year we have expanded to 2 days. Hopefully, next year we hope to go much more bigger and deeper. A lot of people ask us why Manthan. Manthan, if some of you would know, that Manthan refers in the Hindu scriptures to the great churning of the ocean. There's this whole story of Samudra Manthan, where gods and demons, which is nothing but the good and the bad which exist within us, they churned the depths of the ocean. But what did they uncover? It was not just Amrit. Before Amrit, there was also poison. And there were a lot of material and non material things which came out. So, similarly, in these 2 days, like the divine churning in Manthan, we'll be exploring parts of ourselves that often get hidden beneath the surface because we are so busy with our lives. And one of the most powerful starting points in understanding ourselves is emotions. Why emotions? All of us have, at every day, at any given moment, we do experience emotions in different forms. We may not be able to name them, but emotions is what runs our lives, right? So before we begin, let's take a moment to check in with ourselves. If everybody can take a deep breath, just an inhalation and an exhalation, and in the chat, share one word that describes how you're feeling right now. There's no right or wrong in this. It's just a moment of self awareness. If y'all can tell, how are y'all feeling right now? In one word. Okay, overwhelmed, awesome, not good, peaceful, present, calm, silence, confused, chaotic, enthusiastic, curious. You see how many emotions are there and how all of us are going through, even though we are all sitting here in the space together, all of us are feeling different emotions, right? But typically, what happens, and I'm really glad that people have mentioned this because generally, when I ask this question, the typical answer is I'm feeling good, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm decent. And I think that's what most of us also write or also say when someone gives us a call, we meet someone, and typically we say, "How are you? Aap kaise ho?" What is the general answer that we give? Oh, I'm good, I'm fine, right? That's what we do. And why do we do that? We seldom give honest answers, right? That I'm sad, I'm frustrated. And I'm really glad people here are mentioning anxious, nervous, frustrated, because those are the true emotions. But typically, we have been trained from childhood not to talk about ourselves. That when someone asks us, "How are you doing?" give a very polite answer, not why bother the other person, right? And what happens in that process? We have forgotten how to express ourselves. We have forgotten who we really are. What is it that we truly desire? For all of us here who are parents or who have nieces and nephews or who have seen small kids of their friends, we know that when they get angry or they are going through something, they will just bang the door and say, "Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anyone." When was the last time that any of us here have done that? When, if let's say we didn't want to talk to anyone, but we were surrounded by our family members, with our friends, we had certain responsibilities. But when was the last time when you have told yourself, "It's okay, I'm just going to go and give myself those 10 minutes"? Okay, that's great, Rashmi, 3 weeks back. Nice, right? But typically today, that's great, Deepa. But typically what we do, "Oh, Kavya, great, every day." Pushpa is saying now. Swati says, "I don't remember." Because generally, what do? We put on a smile, we chin up, and we say, "Okay, let's go on with life." Right? There's an example. So I watch movies a lot. I'm a big Bollywood fan. There was a movie, if you all have watched, Lapata Ladies. In that, there's a scene where, the mother says that she doesn't even remember what food she likes anymore. Because for years, she's only cooked what the rest of the family wants. How many of us can associate with that? That we don't remember, we are so busy. Food is an example. I mean, it could be food for women who are cooking, it's food. For men, it could be they're so involved in the responsibility of the household that do you remember what was a sport that you liked or what was a hobby that you liked? For most of us, we are so involved in our day to day responsibilities, right? This is actually a quiet reflection of how men and women, especially when we are like, I know we're living in a traditional family structure, we begin to lose touch with our own identity. We forget. We slowly begin to erase ourselves, our desires, our choices, what we liked. And believe me, it's not out of resentment. It kind of over a period of time becomes a habit. It comes starts out of love, out of conditioning that we are supposed to take care of this. As women, this is our role. As men, this is our role. But what is the cost? We begin to lose touch. We even stop asking ourselves basic questions like, what do I like? What do I want to eat? What do I want to wear? What makes me feel alive? Because at some point, we have all started operating on autopilot. Is this something everybody resonates with? That we are all living our lives on autopilot, right? So when was the last time, like this is something that I've already asked. So, but then what happens? What happens to that emotion which comes up, but we are not allowed to express either because of external environment or because of our internal conditioning? And we kind of don't allow ourselves to feel that emotion. We suppress it. That sadness which we have brushed off, that anger which we swallowed, the grief which we never spoke about, right? Like even now, when the plane crash has happened, or before that, the Pulwama attack, the Operation Sindoor, and the way the world is going right now, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of restlessness, anger, which is happening at a collective. And when it happens at a collective, all of us feel it at an individual. But how many of you have the space where you can actually talk about it without someone saying, but how does that affect you? You're living your life normally, right? But there is an emotion which we have felt. So, what happens to that emotion that we don't allow ourselves to feel? Where do they go? Because the truth is that the emotions don't disappear, right? So, today, as we explore the science of emotions, let's look at how emotions, they're not just fleeting feelings. It's not like I have felt anxious now because I have read something or someone has said something to me, but emotions are actually energetic experiences that have the power to shape our health, our choices, even our relationships, unless we bring awareness and healing to them, right? Let's take a scenario. Like, let's say we are walking late in the night somewhere and suddenly we hear footsteps behind us. Now, what happens? Instantly, our body reacts, right? Our
Yes.
breath quickens, our body tenses, right? Our heart starts racing fast. Now, what is this? What is our physical body saying? This is our nervous system's biological defense mechanism. We have all heard about fight or flight. This is the fight or flight response that kicks in to keep us safe. So, which means at a physical level, we have an increased heart rate, our breathing becomes shallow, our muscles tense, right? The blood flow which is coming, that gets diverted to different parts of the organ so that we can quickly move if in case we need to move. That's at a physical level. What happens at the mental level? There is hyper alertness. A lot of thoughts are racing. Am I safe? What's going to happen? If this happens, this is what I will do. If this happens, this is what I will do, right? And then we start overreacting to the slightest of sounds that happens around us. That is physical level, mental level. Now, what happens at an emotional level? There is anxiety, there is fear. We start feeling unsafe, right? There can also be an emotional shutdown to what is happening, right? Now, the similar thing, let's say this was something that happened in an external environment. Now, if in our internal environment, there is an infection which has there is a cell which has caught infection due to a virus, due to a bacteria. Now, what happens to that cell? When an infection destroys a cell in our physical body, when the defense mechanism kicks in, the surrounding cells, they signal each other to wall it off. They kind of isolate that infected cell to prevent it from spreading, right? Why? Because if it spreads, then it harms other parts of our body. So this isolation is temporary until the isolation is not required. Because the truth is that no single part of our body can thrive on its own. All our organs work together as a system. And this is exactly what happened in the above example when we were walking alone in the night. Because the fear that we felt at an emotional level, it got translated into the thought of like, okay, I am sorry. First, the thought comes that I am not feeling safe, which then gets translated into an emotion of fear, which then relates to our body, and the body starts acting where our heart rate, our breathing, our muscles all go through something, right? So that one thought got translated into physical symptoms, warning us whether we should fight or flee from this scenario. Now, why does this even matter to us? Why? Because when the threat, so this was an example of when we were walking alone in the night, right? But on a daily basis, somebody tells us, gives us a harsh comment. There is a relationship conflict. or something happens where we get triggered, a painful memory comes up. All these times when a thought is triggered, we release an emotion, and similarly, our body responds as if we are in physical danger. Because our body, mind, and emotions are all interconnected. And over time, when that becomes too much for our body to handle, when we are exposed to chronic emotional stress, we come up with digestive issues. We come up with sleep disturbances, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue. Is this something everybody can relate to? Everybody has gone through this at some time or the other, where you have had sleep issues, digestive issues, you felt anxious, you have chronic pain, or you're just feeling tired for no reason. You don't know why you're feeling because there's nothing else in your environment right now, right? Why does this happen? Because our mind, body, and emotions, they are deeply interconnected. And when we look at healing, we can't heal just one layer. We need to address the whole system. Does that make sense to everyone? Give me a thumbs up if it makes sense to everyone, or say a yes in the chat so that I know that I'm on the right line. Does this make sense? Thank you. Okay, so all of us have heard of quantum physics. Quantum physics is something which explores the behavior of energy at the smallest scale. Okay, and it aligns with the idea that even our thoughts, our intentions, and our emotions can actually influence the energy within and around us, which in turn can then potentially affect our health and well being. So, from quantum physics, Deepak Chopra, someone that all of us would have heard of sometime or the other, came up with a concept called quantum energy healing. What does that do? It combines principles from quantum physics with the traditional healing practices, right? And it is believed that by understanding and manipulating our body's energy fields outside and within, we can achieve physical, emotional, and mental healing. And this is what the therapies, when we speak about energy healing therapies like shadow healing, inner child, chakra meditation, chakra healing, energy meditation, your theta healing, family constellation, Reiki, pranic healing. This is how these therapies work by releasing the stored tension and the emotional heaviness that we all feel in our body and the nervous system, thus allowing true healing to take place across all levels. Okay. Now, if we go back to that feeling, let's say we spoke about feeling sad, which maybe we felt as a child when something didn't happen as we wanted, or our parents said no to us for something, but we never did anything because we were told that, you know what, you're not supposed to express your sadness, you're not supposed to cry. Now, since everything has energy, even our emotions carry energy. So, what happened to the energy of that sadness? Or let's say it could be anger, it could be nervousness, it could be frustration, anything, because all emotions carry energy. So, what happens to the energy of that emotion when we suppress it or when we ignore it? Because if we truly felt our emotions, they come like waves. You know, you feel it, it goes up, it reaches a crest, then it starts coming down, and then it passes on. But we don't do that, right? So when we suppress or ignore our emotions, what is happening? We hold it in our nervous system, our physical body, and we go on with life as if nothing has happened. But it gets stored in our physical body. It could be a tight chest, stomach knots, tense muscles, shallow breathing. Like we always say, oh, I have a backache, constant backache. I have my shoulder paining. I have a neck pain. I have digestive issues. Or it gets embedded in our nervous system, which moves into a trauma loop, which means that anything, smallest thing that happens, we get triggered, and our reactions are way above that trigger which happened at that moment. Because honestly, that we are not reacting from what happened right now. We are reacting from that whole stored trauma in our nervous system. Or the third point is that the suppressed emotions, they get buried in a subconscious, where it affects our belief systems, our value systems, mood swings. A lot of us these days have, right? Especially with our teenagers, where we say, I don't know why my child is behaving this way, or I don't know why my manager is behaving this way. I don't know why I am feeling this. Because it's the collective emotions, the trauma of those stored emotions in our subconscious, which is what gets triggered. So, do you see how everything, our emotions, our thoughts, at a mental level, and a physical body, all of them are connected because nothing works in isolation? Yeah. But till now, we have been talking about how when someone tells us something or something happens, how we store it. I would like to address something which I come across many times, which we feel is good for us: self criticism or self blame. A lot of us have been taught to have a self talk, which is negative because that acts as a motivator. You know how often when we have made a mistake, we are like, oh no, I'm not going to make this mistake again. So I continuously am talking to myself in that negative self talk. No, 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 I'm not going to do this again. I always make a mistake. I have to be extra careful, because we feel that this is motivating us. We are trying to become a better person. And what do we do in the process? We start pointing ourselves at every flaw, every shortcoming. But what we don't realize is that maybe in the beginning it worked as a motivator, but over a period of time, you start developing a process or a terminology known as self sabotage. Because we become, what do we do? We become hyper aware of everything that we are doing. We are so afraid of slipping up because of that one mistake or because someone told us that what you have done is not right, that we end up feeling not very good about ourselves. Right? We may think that, oh, we need to take more responsibility. Only if I did this in a better way. Only if instead of 10 hours, I put in more 2 hours, additional 2 hours. Only if I was more perfect. But what are we doing in the process? We are eroding our confidence. We stop feeling joyful for any activity or action that we are doing because we are constantly criticizing ourselves. Is this something people here associate with? Is this something that you all do on a regular basis? In your strive to be more perfect, in your strive to be, oh, this is something I need to put in more effort, I need to please that person around me. What does it do of you? What does it leave of you? You know, we ourselves give away our joy. Because imagine if externally you are hearing, you are not good at this, you always mess up things. In addition to that, I am myself telling myself, I am not good at this. I always mess things up. Right? As Sandhya said, it's exhausting. Rashmi said, it's you feel empty, right? But the other thing that happens, that remember, always remember, because I'm constantly telling myself that I am not good at this, eventually the people around me also start believing that. Because that's the energy that I am carrying. Whether it's true or not. Because one rule in life is that people treat us the way we treat ourselves. So if we believe that we are not good enough, we keep diminishing ourselves, the world around us will mirror that same thing back to us. Not because it's true, but because it's what we believe of ourselves. So it's a loop. Somebody told us once that you are not good enough. I start telling myself on a regular basis, I am not good enough. When I am coming from that energy, the others around me start believing that, and I never get out of that loop. And then I truly start believing and I behaving like I am not good enough. Right? Does that make sense? Yes, no. And soon this is what then starts coming out as physical ailments, that chronic pain, that fatigue, that sleeplessness. And then it starts translating into other parts of our life. Because obviously, let's say if I'm carrying that energy, then whether it's your personal relationships, your professional relationships, your health, money issues, it starts permeating in every area of your life. Because remember, every single thought, every word, whether it comes from others or from within, it creates a ripple in our body because it carries energy. We said in the beginning that every thought, every intention has the energy. Now, energy can't be destroyed or created, right? So that energy starts getting stored in our body. And believe me, on a daily basis, we are absorbing so much through people's words, through people's silences, actions, our words, and today, honestly, even through social media. Because the social media is constantly telling us, you need to look like this, you need to be of this color, your hair needs to be this, you need to weigh so much, you need to achieve this in your career. We are absorbing everything. So can you imagine, for the last however old you are, 20, 30, 40, 50, how much of junk we are storing in our body, which has been silently carrying not a day or two, but years of unprocessed emotions which we are carrying in our body, right? So let's take a step back and let's understand, how do we take in this information? Now, we have all learned in school that we take in information through our five senses, right? Which means, what are those five senses? Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. So here, when all of you are looking at me, my video is on, I'm saying the words, all of you are looking at me, all of you are hearing what I am saying, right? But each one of you is interpreting it differently, even though the input is the same. Because if I ask three of you all, what have I said in the last half an hour? Believe me, everybody's interpretation would be different. Now, why is that? Because once information enters our brain through the senses, right, it is processed through our mind. The brain is like a hardware, like the laptop or the phone which we are using. The mind is our software, which does the processing. The mind is our mental software, where, where we have thoughts, we have our memories, our emotions, our perceptions, and this is where the interpretation of the senses, of the information happens. Okay? But a key point is that when the brain receives the information, the mind, which assigns meaning to everything, to all the information that it takes in, it assigns it differently. All of our minds work differently. Now, why is that? Now, I'm going to take you back to understand our mind, because we don't really ever, I don't think any of us have really thought about our mind before, that what happens to us when we take in information. And that's why I've called this thing as a science of emotions, because we really need to understand. And if we get an understanding of what happens in our mind when we take in information, believe me, life becomes simpler, because you become aware of what is happening. Then, if you want to make those tweaks and changes, it becomes easier. Now, according to certain contemplative traditions like Buddhism and certain Hindu scriptures, Vedantic scriptures, the mind is divided into four parts. Okay, now mind is a mental process, right? So it's not like there is a clear division. But typically, when we say for our understanding that the mind is divided into four parts, it's to understand what processing happens. It's like, in a factory, when you put in the raw material, there are certain steps that happen before an output comes out. So our input today, let's say, is the information that I am giving you. You're taking it in through your sight, because you can see me. You're taking in through your ears, because I'm talking. There's also a smell. Everybody is sitting in a different environment where you can smell certain things, where you can use all the other senses, right? So now let's look at these four parts. I have picked up the names which are most commonly used. You can also Google it later on if you want to go into it more deeper. The first part is called Manas. Okay, now what is Manas? Manas is our thinking or our coordinating mind. What does Manas do? Manas takes in that raw sensory information and connects it with our mental consciousness. So, whatever I'm talking right now, it is taking in that as it is, the raw material, and it is the starting point where it puts in that information into the other parts of the mind. Right? So, it connects with the senses, takes in the information, and then it relays it to the second part, which is called Buddhi. Buddhi is your intelligence, or that mind which selects which sensory information to focus on. What is the data that is irrelevant to me? Like for some of you, maybe the way my hair is, or maybe the color of my dress, it adds on to the information that I am giving. For some people, that does not make a difference, because they are purely listening to what I am saying. For some people, because there is a lot of other things that, oh, there's an office work that has to happen, there's something in the kitchen that has to be done, someone is calling me. So you start filtering out in your mind, you're like, okay, I'm going to get the recording. Let me just look at the main points. So what does the buddhi do? It filters out at that moment what is irrelevant for me. and focuses on what you think at this moment is important. It's kind of decision making and judging. For some people, if instead of me, saying that, let's say if I had short hair and I was wearing maybe a different kind of a top or something, a certain kind of a judgment comes in, or a certain kind of a perception comes in, which knowingly or unknowingly changes the meanings that we assign to the words that I am saying, because we are taking in information from all our senses, whether we know it or not. Right? So we took in information through manas. We gave it a logical meaning through our buddhi. Then it goes to something known as chitta. What is chitta? Chitta is the place which stores all our experiences, our memories, our belief systems, our value systems, our samskaras, our past decisions. And this is where we start assigning meaning to the information. Rashmi, if you Google now, there can be different things, because there is nothing like I said, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and the fourth is Ahamkara. It can, in some text, it will say that Chitta is the second part, some place it will say it's the first part, it's the third part. So I am just putting it how I have learned it, like Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahamkara. But typically, this is the function that it does, and it all happens in milliseconds. So it's going through all the four parts. Yeah. So chitta is, which is like a repository, like, your Google search of all the accumulated knowledge and the wisdom that we have. So today you have taken in some information and it is being stored in your chitta in the way that is in line with your past memories. Or let's say you have attended a similar session before, or you have heard of this before. Okay. Now, at that time, the impression that you created, what I am saying today will go and either stamp on it or make a few changes in it. Right? And next time when you hear something similar, Chitta will draw upon those stored experiences to guide the response. So if last time, let's say, it didn't make sense to you, you were really bored about it. This time when I start talking, you may just drop off this and say, okay, let me join the next session because this is going to be very boring. Because your Chitta has stored this topic as boring based on your past experience. So Manas, Buddhi, Chitta. The fourth is Ahamkara. Ahamkara, as we all know, is ego, right? Which asserts our individuality, which actually assigns the I to this experience. It leads to attachment, it leads to pride. And ego is necessary, right, for our survival, because it also gives us a sense of belongingness. If we didn't have a sense of I, then all of us would be sitting in the Himalayas as sannyasis. Right? So ego is necessary. The problem happens when there is an overactive ego, right? That is when we experience suffering. When we cannot think beyond what is happening to us. So if I have to recap the four, Manas, which receives the raw data which we are intaking, Buddhi, which analyzes it logically, Chitta, which we know, which is our storehouse where this information goes in. It stores, plus it tells us that this is how we need to respond. And Ahamkara, which adds a very personal touch based on how we feel about ourselves and this information that we are taking in. Does this make sense to everybody? Yeah? Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahamkara. Now, like I said, we have said these four parts, but it's not like there are four parts in our brain. It's all a mishmash because it's milliseconds, right? While we are processing, it just zigzags through all of these. But typically, this is how information is processed. Now, let's look at how these four parts shape our emotions and consequently our reactions, right? So, how we spoke about that, there is an input which gets processed here, and then there is an output. So, when the information goes through our manas, our buddhi, our chitta, and our ahamkara, first a thought gets generated, which leads to an emotion. Based on the emotion is what determines what our output will be. Because the four parts of the mind are working together, and it is the thought and the emotion which decides how we are interpreting and responding to the input information. Yeah, I'll give an example, Usha. Okay, so let's say for people who are working, your manager, or let's say at home, our parents or our spouse, we are doing something or we were supposed to do something, and they come and tell us, why have you not done this till now? All of us have heard this sometime or the other. It could be our manager, our parent, our spouse, our teacher. It could be our children. It could be a friend. Sometimes someone has come in our life and said, "Why have you not done this till now?" Now, what happens? Manas takes this information in as a raw data, as like, okay, my parent or my manager has said, "Why have you not done this till now?" It takes in the information. What does the buddhi do? Once we receive that information, the buddhi jumps in. It tries to make sense of the situation. It doesn't work in isolation. It sends the information that it has got. And let's say the manager or the parent has said something before it, after it. But our buddhi has picked up this statement and sent it to the chitta, which is what? The chitta is the storehouse of our memories, our beliefs, our impressions, past experiences, right? Now, when we send this information to our chitta, any update on the work, what does chitta do? If in the past, when someone else has said this statement to us, and we have had a healthy experience where someone said this to us, we gave a response that, "Oh no, what is going to take time? I will do it by tomorrow." And they have said, "Okay, fine, that's totally okay." And we have had a very neutral or a healthy past experience. The thought that will come is, "Oh, he's just following up with me." Right? So you'll feel neutral or you'll feel responsible that I need to finish this work. And you will reply with an update. Right? So there is no strong emotion that comes up because your chitta has said that in the previously, when someone has asked you of an authority figure or someone like a friend has asked, you responded this way and they were okay with it. So you'll behave neutrally. But if your chitta connects it to an old wound or a trauma that you have gone through, where let's say you had a past boss who was really very critical, or you had a very controlling parent in your childhood, right? When you hear what's the update on your work, your chitta will send a message saying, "Oh, he or she is criticizing me. Now I'm going to get a shouting." So, what does that do with that thought? Because what you're thinking, when someone uses that tone, it means I'm in trouble. Your inner child from the past, when you were a kid and you had a controlling parent, that inner child comes up saying, "I am in trouble." So, instead of feeling emotion, instead of feeling neutral, you have an emotional reaction to that statement. What's the update on your work? It could be defensive. You could become anxious. You could become angry, right? And then you might respond in a way that is really not warranted in that situation because the other person may have meant it very casually or just asking for a follow up, right? And you don't realize why you have got hyper or why you have got angry at that question. Does this make sense? Have all of us reacted sometimes to a situation which didn't really warrant at that situation? Because this is nothing but your past emotions, unprocessed emotions to a similar situation which was stored in your chitta. And now, when we talk about our ego or our ahamkara, and we attach our ego to this, now that will decide the intensity of our response. Because till now we said, okay, he's criticizing, I'm in trouble. But the moment I say, he does this only to me, or why does this happen only to me? This is where your ego comes up, Usha. Because I make it about myself. Oh, yesterday when he was speaking to a colleague of mine, or when my parent addressed my sibling, that time that tone wasn't there. It's only me. That's my ahamkara or the ego. And that can then lead to a out of proportion response from our side. So the same input and thought can lead to different emotions, right? And depending on the emotion and the ego that we attach is what determines our response and the way we respond it. Does this make sense? Is everybody on board? So it's not the situation that triggers our emotions or our response. Always remember, it's the meaning that our mind assigns, which is based on our past experiences, our value systems. Maybe it's not an experience, maybe from childhood we have heard people around us say something like, you know what, oh, when someone is asking like this is what it means. Or when someone doesn't say, this is what it means, this is what a silence means. So remember, every experience that we have is filtered through these four parts of the mind. And this is what the mind does. It recycles our old wounds into new responses. So unless we become aware of it and we begin healing what lives in our chitta, the responses will not change. And that is what most of the healing therapies, or what we will see in the other 7 sessions, 3 sessions today and 4 sessions tomorrow, are different things which will help you to access that chitta and clear that chitta from things. Or so we can't change the experiences that we have gone through, but what we can do through healing and therapies and through awareness is change the meanings ascribed to those instances. So when we talk about, a lot of people ask us, past life regression, inner child, do we go there and change? No, we do not change what has happened in the past. We can't change that. But what we change is how do we store the meaning and the emotions that we have ascribed to those incidents, so that today when something similar happens, our reaction is more from the new meaning or the new emotion, or from a neutral state. Yes, Usha, ego will vary with different experiences and with different people, because we also ascribe meanings to different people. Like the same thing, if let's say my daughter asks me, vis-a-vis my spouse asking me, I will react differently. With my daughter, as playing the role of a mother, I may be more gentle. But if my spouse asks me something, it's possible that I look at him as an authority figure, and something as my controlling father or a controlling manager comes up, and then I react from there. So meanings, it's not just a single, it's not linear. So meanings are ascribed in different ways. Yeah, does that make sense? So always remember, what are emotions? Emotions are energy in motion, right? Emotion, energy in motions, unless they are blocked. So the natural tendency of emotions is to move through us. And that is why, when we are sad, we cry. When we are afraid, if you see, we start shaking, or we shout when we are angry. That is our physical reaction to releasing all these emotions. But when we block that emotion, when we block that release, the emotion stays trapped inside. And over time, as we saw before, it can lead to emotional numbness, physical symptoms. We feel stuck, or sometimes we feel disconnected with ourselves, right? Because remember, when we feel something deeply, like sadness, fear, joy, it's not just a mental experience. They have a physical component also. Our nervous system, our muscles, our breath, our organs all respond. Right? Have we experienced that before? Like, have you all experienced that if you feel fear for something, you may feel your stomach tightening, right? When we are angry, what happens? We suddenly feel our body has heated up. Some of us clench our fists. Some of us feel the heat in the face. Some of us feel something in our gut. If we feel sad about something, we often feel a heaviness or a tightness in our chest, right? All of us have experienced that. So, this tells us that the emotions have a physical energy also, which means that when we feel an emotion, which we do not let it out, or we do not process, we do not allow ourselves to feel that emotion, what happens? It goes and sits in our physical body. So remember, when you experience a health issue, a chronic pain, it could be BP, it could be thyroid, it could be fatigue, sleep problems. That's your body's way of saying, hey, there is something deeper emotionally that needs your attention. So yes, do go to a doctor, because we need to get diagnosed. We need to have medicine. Sometimes we need to have surgeries. But also remember to take that pause. Go within yourself and see what is it that my body is trying to say. Because remember, our body, these pains and the illnesses are our body's way of talking to us. And when left unhealed, this can manifest as mental breakdowns, anxiety, sometimes even clinical depression, or extreme disorders. And healing comes from awareness and expression. So once you become aware, and that's what happens in therapy sessions, you can pick up any modality. What do? We actually go and access that chitta to see what is the experience from your past, what is your value system, what is that emotion which was left unprocessed, which is causing this in your life right now. It could be a relationship issue, a health issue, a career issue. It could be emotionally you're feeling something very strong which you don't know why. And in the therapy session, when you're allowed, either it could be a free expression which you haven't done to those emotions, or we go and change the meanings ascribed to those situations. You can actually see a change in that challenge in your life. So that expression can be through talking, through crying, through breathing exercises, through movement, through meditation, through therapies, practices like yoga, body work. It could be anything, right? Does that make sense? Give me a yes or give me a thumbs up that what I have said in the last 50 minutes has made sense to you. Because the next session and the session after that are all going to be connected to what I have said. What we have done in this session is actually laid a base. Because something which I really love, something that Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Because remember, it is that emotion which we carry in our body. It is that emotion through which we react. It is the emotion which decides our response to everything that we are doing in our lives. Even these 2 days, it will be the emotions that we generate in every session. And it will be a nice practice if you can journal at the end of today and at the end of tomorrow to see what has resonated with you. What is it that you can deal with? Because again, we are like onions, okay? Don't try to go too deep in the first instance. You need to release the first layer, then the second layer, then the third layer. Yeah. And then slowly start going down. And that is what healing, that is what therapy, that is what, let's say, our chakra system, our auras, the energy medicines, the energy systems, everything, all the topics that we are going to address in the coming 7 sessions are going to deal with different ways and methods of clearing the heaviness, the unprocessed emotions that we are storing in our body. Yeah. So thank you so much. You all have been very patiently listening to me.